I'm really excited to start chatting with our wonderful panel. But before I get underway, I also like to acknowledge our awesome teacher contributors, the 4 folks that put together the pieces for us this week. So Pranjali, Holland, Elisa, and Enrique, you guys were all amazing. If those of you who are on right now haven't had a chance to check out each of their pieces, they're great. And I know that all of our authors were really inspired by the things that you had to say. And we'll be touching on some of those themes as we move forward. And with that, let's move forward. And let's start by, we're going to have each of these wonderful folks introduce themselves and tell us a little story. So Lynn, are you ready?
I'm ready as I'll ever be. I'm a morning person. It's a good thing this is recognizing the West Coast need for an early startup. Teacher Appreciation Week is something new to me. I don't recall that it existed when I was in high school or college. And it's just such a wonderful opportunity to reflect. One of the things that Jen suggested that we talk about teachers who have inspired us. And I had 2 high school English teachers. And the interesting thing about them is they both inspired me very much. But the one my junior year inspired me by encouraging me, complimenting me, and so forth. The one my senior year encouraged me by chastising me, basically, and told me that I was focusing on quantity, not quality, that I was all over the place. I was doing too much. I should really focus. And when I didn't get the message, she'd phone my mother.
Oh my
mother would let me know the message. So what I'm saying is that I realized through that different people are motivated in different ways. And as a teacher, I needed to mirror both of their ways. I couldn't just do one, but I had to figure out which approach worked best with which students. Mm-hmm. I'm a retired teacher from City College of San Francisco, and my undergraduate degree was in English literature, which, as you can probably imagine, has nothing to do with learning a foreign language. I graduated from college and wanted to travel, and I had an opportunity to go to Japan. And in those days, you didn't need any training to teach English as a second language. If it was your mother tongue, you could teach it. So I went to Japan, and I fell in love with the process, but I knew nothing about how to be an effective language teacher. And that's another place where I had mentors, and I have special people to thank, because the people who have been there and been teaching for some years just took me under their wing, and in the teachers when we chit chat. And pretty soon I worked myself out of the frenzy and figured out what might work. Things have changed now. I'm retired. I'm not in the teacher's room where I used to have my mentors and the people I admired. In the teacher's room, we talk about our successes. I'd learn about other people's successes and try it out. We talk about our failures, and other people would make suggestions, and we go in and try those things. Now I'm isolated. I'm in my home like so many of us are. But through the generosity of teachers who are teaching now, I'm trying to catch up on what all this thing about remote learning is. And special thanks to the teachers who let me observe their classes, because that's the way I'm learning now. That's all I can say. It's a wonderful field. It's still a wonderful field. When I started, there was no TESOL, no organization, only 2 universities in the country that provided training. So things have really changed. And I think that's wonderful, because I think diversity strengthens everybody. Thank you for participating today. Looking forward to hearing your comments as we go through.
Yay. Thank you, Lynn. And I think all of you have had a part in also that development of teacher knowledge as well. So, all right, Gretchen, do you want to tell us a little bit about you? Share a little bit.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Bear with me. I'm taking care of a 10-month-old while I'm doing this webinar, because since COVID, since last March, I ran up here on a 24-hour notice to help my daughter with my grandchildren, which is the reason I retired in 2016. But I've been in the field of adult ESL since 1971, total of 45 years with the same district and teaching the whole time. And I think something that really struck me in reflecting on all this is that I'll never forget in 1975 when within days we had hundreds of Vietnamese refugees in our classrooms, literally 100 in a room, sitting on the floor, you name it, because of the fall of Vietnam. And I get emotional just thinking about it because it was such a traumatic time. But that's what ESL is. It's basically fluid all the time, responding to world crises, world wars. And so my inspiration all these years has been our students who, you know, when you think about it, have come here with nothing and have everything is brand new. Same thing this year with online education. Suddenly it's so brand new for all of us. So it's really not that different. It's a technology time this year, but in those days, what we did is the instruction of the time was Lotto English. You know, is this a book? Yes, it is a book. No, it isn't a book. And that was irrelevant for these refugees sitting in our classroom. So we were creating lessons on a day-by-day basis, you know, that were competency-based. And the first lesson was, what's your name? What's your address? What's your phone number? Because that was survival, essential information our students needed, and develop dialogues from then on. And so that has been my inspiration all along, is that the teachers that are in adult ed ESL have to be that kind of person that you respond to what's going on with our students. And after the Vietnamese refugees came, then we had the big amnesty, and we had thousands of students in the classroom who, because funding reasons, needed to learn history and government integrated with ESL. And then came, and it's always been driven by funding, but then the next wave was, in order to keep our funding, we had to do family literacy, which was and teach our students how to tutor in the classrooms at their kids' schools. And of course, the recent wave is integrated educational training, vocational ESL. So we teachers have been always asked to turn on a dime and create new curriculum or new ways of instruction. And I'm just amazed at all the teachers I've seen that do this so beautifully. I have not been in the classroom during this past year, but I've been doing some staff development. And again, I have been so amazed by the teachers out there that are stepping to the plate. But that's what we do in adult ed ESL. And that's what our students do. I've always been inspired by our students because of what they've been through. How can we not do, step in and do what's needed to meet the need? So anyway, I hope that's sufficient. I'm very happy to be with all of you, and thank you for all that you do.
Thank you for sharing, Gretchen. All right, Dennis, you want to tell us?
Okay, welcome everybody. In thinking about Teacher Appreciation Week, there's a story I want to tell you about a teacher who really changed my life. And a little background, I had studied music education in college, and within a year I hit a brick wall. It was not a great fit, and kind of on the rebound, I ended up in Peace Corps training, and I was in a middle school English program headed for Korea, and our training was in New Jersey. A great group of potential future Peace Corps volunteers. Anyway, we had to learn how to teach English, right? And so we had some faculty that taught us from Fairleigh Dickinson University in New Jersey. And I remember this one woman who tried to teach us a little bit of theory and so on. And I must confess, we were probably not the best students in the world. We were a little unruly, and we didn't like her all that much. She seemed very theoretical, and we liked to make fun of her behind her back. Anyway, one day she invited us to observe her teaching an elementary school class, ESL in Hoboken, New Jersey. And a few of us looked at each other and thought, well, it's a chance to get away from here, and who knows what could hurt. Why don't we see what she's up to? So we went there, and I won't give this teacher's name, but in watching her It was just amazing. It was a miracle. She was a true teacher, and she had these kids in the palm of her hand. Ooh, I'm getting emotional thinking about this. Anyway, I want to say watching an effective teacher is one of the best things anyone can ever do. It's just thrilling. And in that moment, I remember a light went on in my mind and I thought, I can do that. I can kind of, I knew what she was doing and I thought, I can learn to do that. And like I say, it changed my life.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you for sharing that. That's wonderful. Sylvia, do you want to give your story?
Sure. I've been teaching adult ESL students and now working in professional development since 1971. So I'm pretty old, but also I got my start as being an instructional aide to my husband for his adult ESL class. And we were both new to the field. And I just found it to be my passion. I just went, oh my gosh, I have to do this. And I was very fortunate to have a program coordinator named Shar Jorgensen, who's still a close friend, who encouraged me to get the credentials. At that time, then I had to get the degrees and get my TESOL, start teaching part-time all over the place. And I finally got a full-time job at the school that first hired me as an instructional aide. And it was so bittersweet because my program coordinator, my friend Shar, who'd inspired me so much, became a dean, and I took over her role as program coordinator. And what inspires me each and every day is, as everyone else has said, you out there doing amazing things in libraries, in community centers, online, and the empathy you have for your students, and of course the students. So I'm just grateful to be part of this field.
Thank you. And Donna.
Okay, you see everybody how fortunate I am to work with these other people, that other authors and their wonderful stories. But my name is Donna Price, and I taught all levels of ESL at the San Diego Community College Continuing Education Program for over 40 years. I'm going to share a little story that I think many of you can relate to because it's very similar to what's happened this past year. So I got to put this into context. It was in the year 2000, so over 20 years ago, and I was like at the peak of my career. I was teaching an intermediate class. I had 40 students, and I had been in the same classroom for 15 years. So I was really in my comfort zone. I could just go in my class and I just knew what I was going to do. Well, one day I walked in and I saw 20 computers in the back of my classroom. And at this time, you have to remember that nobody had computers except computer classes. So I said, what the heck am I going to do with these? And, you know, what am I going to do? So what I did was I ignored them for a month. And then I got, and also you need to know, and Gretchen kind of alluded to this, and at about that time, we were supposed to integrate a little bit more these workplace readiness skills. And that includes digital literacy. We were supposed to embed digital literacy skills in our class. And of course, we didn't have any training. Does this sound familiar to anybody? So at this point then, I got an instructional assistant, like Sylvia, how she started. So I got this assistant. She was 20 years old and had never taught. And after a few weeks, she says, you know, Donna, what are you going to do with those computers? The students are asking. I said, I don't know. And she realized that I was clueless, and she was very diplomatic. And she said, well, let's sit down and I'll show you how to use them. And this younger woman showed me and taught me, and she was so patient and so kind. And remember, these are old Apple computers with the big old hard drive and the floppy disk. And, it was a very humbling experience. And because of her, we were able to embed these skills with my students. Her name is Beth Bogage, and I would like to say that she now has a contract in our district, and she teaches full time, and she's a technology mentor to her colleagues. And I'll never forget her, because now when I help newer teachers or older teachers that need some help with anything, but mostly technology, I have a lot more patience because I remember how Beth was with me. Okay, so Jen, take it away.
All right. Oh, thank you all for sharing all of that. That was so lovely. All right. So what we're going to do now, so that you guys out there know, is that each of the authors has come up with a question based on, again, the wonderful videos that were posted this week. And so we're actually going to start out. Sylvia, I think we're going to start with you, right?
Yeah,
And
I
she's
think
gonna
so.
share her
That was the
question. She's
plan.
going to share a question.
Okay, as you see my question up here, when I looked at the videos in the blogs, I was struck by all the contributors and how they talked about what their learners were experiencing. And Pranjali talked about how it was really important for her to show up socially and emotionally for her students, and that she realized that it was okay for them to go off topic in group work because they just really needed to communicate. And Enrique mentioned that students went to school, but all of a sudden school came into their homes, and their homes were already having all these other functions, and all of a sudden their homes became the school. So my question to you guys is, as you're thinking about this, what have you been hearing from colleagues about the social emotional learning impact of virtual learning on students?
So
Don't just all jump in at once.
I'd like to start because I do keep in touch with a lot of my colleagues and friends. And one thing that I hear is that there's a lot of crying going on. I mean, I don't think it's just from virtual learning, but it's just the whole situation. So one of the teachers I know, she leaves her Zoom class open after class for the students to interact, because they talk about how what they miss the most about face-to-face is that they don't get to meet, in the cafeteria, they don't get to meet after class. So I think keeping that communication open after the class, and the teacher doesn't even have to be there, that's one thing that I've heard.
Something I've observed is just like Gretchen with Simon, when there's someone in their home, frequently there's more than someone. Sometimes there's a child sitting in the lap. Sometimes there's a little noise in the background. Sometimes you hear the clanking of the pots. But what I've observed when I've watched the Zoom screen with all the students, and you see the student who has the son in his lap, there's suddenly another student's child is coming up to the screen. So I'm seeing that in some ways, this being in the home is creating a connection among students that we don't get in the regular classroom. So that's a positive. Somebody else's turn.
Yeah. I'm thinking that it's hard to answer this with a straight answer. In other words, it affects people very differently. And we learned in Holland's video, that some students just really take to online learning. In fact, they seem to like it better than face-to-face instruction, which just amazed me. But then you've got other students who are hesitant to share their screens and to turn on their cameras, in other words, and it affects people very differently, and we just have to be sensitive to that. But I like this idea of meeting in a Zoom, maybe after class, or extending the time of the class so students can get some of their social needs met.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is that it sort of turned all of us, like we're sharing our whole worlds. It becomes a lot more holistic, right? Because you're not only seeing the person you are in the classroom, but you're seeing the person you are period, because you're brought into people's homes. And it's been wonderful because it's kind of humanizing too. All
Can I
right.
just say
Then,
one more thing? I just
Sure,
would
sure.
like to really say something that Sylvia introduced me to a website, the Teaching Channel. And on this website, there's a guy named, and I'm going to put it in the chat, is a middle school teacher named Tom Gibson. And he talks about how we should embrace these things. For example, if somebody's cat comes walking across the screen, oh, okay, can you introduce your cat? And then, and of course, this is middle school, and this cat, oh, this is Ginger, and I've had her for 4 years. And then the next day, student, how's Ginger? So there's this connection. And what about you? And instead of this people being worried about their baby crying and embarrassed, it's like, hold her up. What's her name? How old is? So his idea is just really to embrace these things.
I agree. Like I kind of love it. All right. So if we are ready, then why don't we all move on to Lynn's question?
Okay, my question is, what are some ways that agencies or programs can get assistance outside the school for the kind of support that teachers need or that students need?
And what were some of the things that inspired you? Like, what were you thinking about when you put that question together, Lynn?
Well, Enrique mentioned that his administration had figured out a way to get laptops or computers for the students. I've heard another school where they actually had arranged to provide books and got the books, arranged a way that students could pick up books from the school, even though the school was closed, or that books could be delivered. Another way I heard was that, from Enrique, that there's administration figured out a way to make sure that students had access to internet. And I've heard that some places actually have set up centers where there's internet connection, so people who don't have it at home can go to the center. And these were all things that the administration did. And I guess my question is, because I feel that sometimes teachers feel perhaps they need to give administration a little shove. Or
it was amazing with Enrique that 60,000 computers were distributed. My mouth just about dropped. But I know at our college, they did distribute books that were locked in the classroom. When students registered for another time, there were people out there giving away books. They couldn't take them back again. They just made sure. They also purchased ebooks for their students. And that kind of goes to Holland's comment that books are so important and that students feel a real commitment to classroom when they can have a book. So when the everything closed down, getting ebooks or physical books to students was really important. And I loved his badge of honor quote. That was really nice.
I also like that he said that a book gives a teacher an opportunity to breathe, take a breath, take a break.
Very
I've never thought of it that way, but that's true.
And I liked how he said you can dive, it's like a diving board, because you dive off the board and then you have, when you land in the water, you have so many other ideas, but you have this you're grounded in the book, but it doesn't just stop with that.
But I am very curious about Enrique's district. Clearly, there's a very strong partnership between the school and the community, and I'm sure there's a history there. I'm concerned because I know in San Francisco, for example, there are all kinds of budget constraints right now, and they're having trouble keeping the classes that they have. So I don't think there's a lot of extra money for free laptops or anything like that.
I think, though, Dennis, that you're pointing out partnership with business. I noticed now in San Francisco, Comcast is running ads about they're setting up centers all around the city where there's access to internet so that people who don't have it at home can go to the center. So that doesn't cost the school, but if people aren't aware of it, the school could publicize it.
Well, and I think one of the things that this really did, that's I think been happening in the ELT community for a while, but really was brought to the fore with COVID, is learner equity, right? Like people having access. LAUSD definitely had to give out, they gave out hotspots, they gave out laptops, they gave out meals to the community at large in the end, when all this went down. And so, yeah, I mean, I think each region and each district, they're trying to figure out like how they address inequity and all the other stuff on top of managing COVID. So it's been pretty amazing. All right, are we ready to move on to
I just,
our next question? Okay, yes, go
I
Gretchen.
just like to quickly that our non-credit community college program, San Diego Continuing Education, has a foundation whereby people contribute and in the community and alumni, et cetera. And we actually have a fund, call it the ESL Book Fund. And teachers have a social every year to, where we get to know each other, and then they donate money, and then we use that fund to buy books for students that cannot afford them through giving them a voucher. So even with online instruction, they're still doing that, and it's proved to be a really wonderful thing to get materials into the hands of students.
That's absolutely true too, Gretchen. And I love watching you multitask.
You're wonderful,
these things
Gretchen.
and be a grandma.
I want to follow the recommendation that Donna quoted from the
Yeah.
person. I want to see Simon's face.
Let's say hi to Simon real quick. If he, I know he's feeling a little fussy.
Bad timing, Gretchen.
She looks like she froze a little bit. Literally.
She did.
Maybe
All right. Well,
maybe-
We can come back to that. I didn't know.
Oh, there's that.
Here we go.
Oh, there she is.
Here. Hi,
Could you
can we see
introduce him, please?
Can you hold him a little higher?
Oh, there we go.
There he is.
Hey.
Hi, Simon.
Let's go look. Say hi.
This would be where students could ask questions and practice question formation. How old is he? What's his name? What's he doing?
Sisters.
Right. Say hi.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gretchen, for
Simon.
sharing. I think so
Yeah.
funny.
All the teachers.
All right. We can continue to hang with us here. And let's see. So then, Donna,
Okay.
can we look
well,
at your question?
Yes. So let me just give you a little background here. And I'm sure as you watch the videos, this will come to your mind. But Elisa and Holland both describe activities they do in their online classes to make the lessons more interactive and get the students engaged. Elisa talked about using Google Maps, and Holland talked about a software program called Flippity. And I'm just wondering what you guys have heard about teachers doing to make their classes more interactive, because it is a little, I think, and people have told me it's a little harder to get students engaged and communicating, except in the breakout rooms. But what have you guys heard in the field?
One thing I think is really important. You mentioned breakout rooms, but using breakout rooms frequently and not necessarily always on task. So you've seen teachers that say, okay, let's take a little break now, go to the breakout room, maybe discuss a favorite thing, but they know they're going to go off topic a little bit, but they need to do that because they're not as familiar. And Donna, I just love the teacher that you featured in one of our presentations, Richard from San Diego Community College District. And it's kind of like what Tom was telling us in the videos. He uses that opening time. He's got everybody in gallery view. And as people come in, he's just, how are you today? Hey, you missed class yesterday. So glad to see you back. What happened about the weather? And I mean, that natural thing that happens in a face-to-face class is just going on in that gallery view. And if the students don't have their cameras on, and there's very good reasons why students don't turn cameras on, not just because they don't want to be seen. Sometimes they're in a situation where it's just they don't have the privacy to be able to interact freely and not have people go in and out. So, but when he does, he'd say, oh, I know you're here, welcome anyway. So.
And
I'm
I think,
reminded-
oh, go ahead, Dennis.
Oh, I'm reminded of something a friend told me. She has a grandson who's in elementary school and resists online learning a little bit, but the teacher is so creative, and the teacher was presenting the letter V in the alphabet, and she asked the students to do a little scavenger hunt and see if they could find something in the house that started with V. So all these kids got so excited, and somebody came back with a jar of Vaseline and Velveeta cheese, you know. They really got into it, and it turned this drudgery assignment into something really exciting.
Dennis, can I add on to that?
Yeah.
Oh,
Speaking of the letter V,
I know it.
we observed, Lynn, in fact, Lynn had observed it, a class where they're learning different medicines from the cabinet. And so they, in an interactive way, the students were asked to bring, you know, the medicine and show it and what the name of it was and what it was good for. So naturally, one of the students in this adult teacher's class showed up with Viagra. and that's just that shows you what can happen. And when you get really real, when you get really real and interactive, anything can happen. But I'm sure the class was very engaged at that point.
It's a particularly entertaining moment.
And you know, another one that talking about Richard, he's trying to explain gadgets. What's a gadget? So he goes and runs in his kitchen and he brings back all these gadgets, like an apple core, a garlic press, and all kinds of stuff. Now you couldn't do that. I mean, I guess you could go to Google Images in a class face to face, but it's really fun to. And then students start going and bringing gadgets. They really are going to remember that word gadget.
Okay. Are we ready for the next question? I think, Jen.
Jen froze a minute.
Uh-oh. Who's supposed to be next?
Maybe.
I think it's going to be Gretchen. Maybe we could go to her question and then Gretchen.
Competing, and that's when I know that he's really engaged.
You were frozen for a minute.
Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry. Well, he's really engaged when they do cahoots, in case you didn't catch it. I can hear him laughing from the other room. All right, let's move on to our next question. Gretchen, okay. Gretchen and Simon.
Right. This is an important question, I think. I picked this question up from Sean Holland's video. And what Holland did is really interesting. He interviewed 6 students who had been in his class. Can we go to the next question?
You want to flip?
Yeah,
sure. We can
flip it, and I need to go put him down. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, we'll come to it.
Thank you. I'll be back in a second.
Yes.
I'm sorry I don't have any baby to show and tell today, but anyway.
Are you really sorry?
Sometimes. Anyway, before I get to this question, I'll read it, but I just want to give a little background, and that is I had a chance to observe a teacher in San Francisco recently, and she warned me in advance. She said, this is not a really exciting class. You know, it's very basic. I just sort of follow the book. And I said, well, I'm really interested in what you're doing. And so I watched her, and sure enough, she used very little tech. She was teaching Adventures book 3, I believe, and she was using Presentation Plus very effectively and so on. But she spent a lot of time with the book and going over comprehension questions in breakout rooms. She did that. And anyway, it was very interesting because there were very few high-tech things going on, but the students were very, very engaged. They were with her. I could just see that. And especially in the breakout rooms, I got a chance to be in some of those breakout rooms. Anyway, I think it was Pranjali, however you say her name. She made the statement that less is more when it comes to technology. And so it made me think about this. Is there a general rule or should teachers use whatever tech they're comfortable with? In other words, do you agree that less is more, or does it kind of depend on the teacher? I'm thinking the teachers have different skill levels when it comes to technology. They have different comfort levels, and teachers have different styles and different temperaments. And if it's your nature to just use every bell and whistle in the book, is that okay if your students are with you? And that brings up the second part of the question. Does the tech level depend on the level of the students, where maybe higher level students need more going on in the classroom to keep them engaged, and maybe more beginning students would want a slower pace somehow? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you guys know I love technology, but I really loved Pranjali's quote that technology is not the answer to making things interesting or dynamic in the classroom. It is meaningful content and interactions that support learning. And I think technology is the tool. We're language teachers, not technology teachers. And so I think it's, in my opinion, it's really important to find the tools that work for you to be the style of teacher that you are and the content you want delivered. And another important part of that is your students have to learn these tools too. So,
Yeah.
And they have to have easy access to them. And they have to work on phones because many of our students are on phones. So I think there's lots of things to consider. I love to learn all about these tools, but then I go, wait a minute, how does this support learning? Can my students use it on a phone? Do they have to register too many places? So I do think less is more as far as we're teachers, of language.
I had the opportunity to observe two different teachers in this same school district. One of them was brought into ESL because of his technology skills. He came out of K-8. The other one was an ESL teacher who didn't know much about technology. And what I saw was an unsuccessful ESL class and a successful ESL class. The unsuccessful one was where the teacher knew so much about technology but didn't know the subject matter. And the ESL teacher was mentored by the technology teacher, which was great because he encouraged her, and she started incorporating things, which I think probably in another year she's going to be a real master with a lot more than some bells and whistles, not just the basics. But I also think it's the learning style of the learner and the learning style of the teacher. And I'm one of those teachers who has to learn one thing at a time and master it before I can go to a second thing. Some people can multitask and can learn several things at once. And I think that's something that if I were back in the classroom now, I would be learning one tool, then another tool. And I think it would need to be another complication is that you have to teach the students how to use the tool too. So it's not just that I need to be able to use it, but I need to be able to teach the students. And I don't think how much technology use relates to the level of the English. I think it relates to the learning style and the learning strengths.
Do you think that now that everybody has developed brain plasticity because they've had to take on all these new tools, even in a non-remote setting, though, do you think that teachers will keep some of these in their tool bags when they go back to the classrooms?
Oh, I hope so.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because there were many opportunities to use digital tools when we were face to face, and maybe I know myself, maybe I wasn't as excited about it then, but when I started using these different tools and saw how my students said they felt like it was more adult learning, they were excited to do these different things. So yes, I hope so.
Well,
I like,
go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry. I just like what Alyssa said in her little video about picking two things, two tools that you really like, and share those with somebody. And I just like the idea of just think of 2 things that really work for you. If the whiteboard on Zoom is just too much, then just pull up a Word document. You're used to using Word. Just find what you need. But I also want to say, not only these supplemental things teachers are trying to implement, but what about all these learning management systems that are thrown at these teachers? Canvas and Blackboard and Google Teams and all. And teachers really have to learn those. That's all their grading and their attendance is there. So they really have to learn that. So in addition to that, now they're thrown all these software things. So I think even more, Alyssa's advice is just pick 2 extra things that you like.
Well, and Terry Pleasant, hello, thank you. She's actually been commenting, I find the Nearpod app useful for making the lesson more interactive while also doing some formative assessments. So that's good, right? It also allows for sharing of opinions and ideas with the bulletin board feature. She says, keeping in mind that tasks have to be achievable, we really do have to make sure we use technology our students are able to use easily. After that, we have to use tech purposefully. So I think that speaks to what you guys have been talking about, right?
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Great.
And I would add, if a teacher's comfortable, the students will be comfortable. And if the teacher's not comfortable with what they're doing, the students aren't going to be comfortable.
No,
for the most part.
I know we skipped Gretchen's question a little bit. Do you want to
completely?
And I'm also going to try and incorporate our the people who are putting in things in the Q&A right now, since we're getting a little short on time. But yes, Gretchen, go ahead with your question.
Okay. This question I put up there as a result of watching Holland's video, where he brought together 6 students who had been in his class before and after online instruction. And I was really, really shocked that out of his 6 students said they would like to go back to face-to-face, that the rest of them really enjoy online learning. And what was even more interesting were the reasons. One of them was, of course, that it's convenient for adults that work, et cetera. One of his students had a baby and was back in the class 2 days later because the student was able to be at home. Right. But the most interesting one was that one student said that she felt she was speaking a lot more in the online class because she didn't feel as shy. And in an online class, everyone is equal on the screen. In other words, as Holland said, everyone's in the front row. And through breakout rooms, she got the chance to talk a lot more freely. She didn't feel as intimidated. So when I heard those things, and having been an administrator in ESL, it seems to me that it could be here to stay, because I know in our district, enrollment has been actually up with online instruction rather than down. Wow. And some classes have gone down, but a lot of them enrollment has gone up. So from a funding perspective, I can see certainly that continuing, maybe hopefully in a hybrid way. So hopefully there is face-to-face possible, but I think districts are gonna really promote online instruction for funding reasons, and maybe students, maybe for adult ed people, it is the more convenient mode of instruction. So I'm just curious what others think.
Well, historically, I'm thinking about my experiences in California in adult ed, and there was a period of time, I believe it was with Amnesty, that programs were being encouraged to do, it was sort of a take-home thing with video. There were a lot of video ESL courses, and the students would check out the videos and take them home, and then they would come back and meet with someone and exchange.
Was that Crossroads Cafe, Lynn?
Actually, it was one of them, but that's a different project I was going to talk about, because the Crossroads Cafe was actually designed for the Crossroads Cafe. Some videos were designed for viewing outside of class, but discussion in class. So there was really 2 different kinds of hybrid, I think. One was you checked out a learning course, took it home, studied, came back, and somebody met with you, did a little bit, and exchanged to the next level. The more recent videos were designed so that you looked at the video outside of class, but you discussed it in class. So that there was, in both of them, there was a class time, but a different focus on what was happening. It looked like the checkout was more like a one-on-one as opposed to interaction. But I don't know what's happened with those programs. I don't know if they've died. I don't know if they've continued. And it'll be interesting to see if this has more. I don't think they're as visible as they were at one time. And I think it'll be interesting. I think this has more possibility of having an impact on the way we deliver adult ed.
Just
I
to ask-
love that one of the students in Holland's class said, well, there's advantages to both, but I sure miss the cafeteria.
That's
I do think that I've been talking to so many of my colleagues and they're going to hybrid in the summer and then again into the fall. And Elisa talked about her high flex class where students committed either to going to the 100% online or 100% face-to-face, and she teaches them synchronously. So I think it's going to happen. And what I worry about is that now this is a new thing because teachers are going to have to think about how to have equal experience for your face-to-face classes and your students that are online because you're in the same classroom. And I think administrators are going to have to, if you're an administrator listening, thinking about getting stand-up desks so students can move around because the face-to-face students can see, but the Zoomies have to be able to follow. And also a second device. It's not going to be enough to have just one device because you're going to have to be able to always see your Zoomies. So it'll bring new challenges too, just what we need.
My prediction is that online instruction is here to stay, but I think it's going to move more toward the hybrid model, which is much easier to manage. And I'm thinking that one thing about having students face is that you can also tutor them in a computer lab or something with all the tech needs that they're going to need when they do their online instruction. But it seems to be the best of both worlds for students to be able to come face to face on some days, and even if it's just one day a week or whatever, to do the online portion, because it increases access for everyone, and it maybe also saves money for the district. I don't know about that.
It's interesting. Kat Bradley Bennett commented earlier about how adult programs across Colorado have had much lower attendance because of the typical digital divide issues, like no internet, no computers, et cetera, as well as the distractions at home of children. So yeah, I think there's things that we need to work out at this point. But again, the fact that everybody just jumped in with both feet, like just didn't think twice, and has been making this work in whatever way they can in the last year is truly amazing. And let's see here. And Kat also said, here's a question for you all. At our community college, we're considering implementing a high flex model to both our TESOL and ESOL classes. Students could attend in person as well as remotely. One of our ESOL teachers is very concerned about the ability to build classroom community in a high flex class. So that's kind of what we were talking about. Do you guys have any other thoughts on that?
I just want to comment that I disagree with Dennis that it's going to be easier to do hybrid. I think it's going to be a new challenge, but my daughter has been doing it now for a year and she's found it extremely difficult for what this question brings up of community. And the thing I mentioned before, that be sure that you're addressing both parts because they're both in the classroom with you. Some people call them the roomies and the Zoomies. Yeah. And how do you make that community? Some ideas that my daughter has done is when they go to, everybody is on some device, whether they're in the room or they're in distance, and they go into breakout rooms and roomies and Zoomies can mix sometimes. So these kind of things can happen, but it's
just to clarify, it sounds like you're talking about a high flex model, not a hybrid. My hybrid is that all students meet in person on some days and all students Zoom on
Ah.
other?
Well, actually, there's a lot of definitions going on in hybrid. So
Oh,
that's why her school's definition of hybrid is what you're saying is high flex. And
Oh.
actually, there's another definition of high flex that says, like Elise is doing now, 100% have to commit the whole class to staying online. 100% have to commit to classroom. But the creator of high flex, which is from San Francisco, said, no, it should be on a daily basis. Today I want to go to class. Today I want to be here. There'll be no more attendance if you don't show up online or the other way. As long as you access and do the work, you're counted. So there's so many definitions. There's just not room.
Well, and to that point, actually, I know that one of the struggles that particularly our students tend to have is like being able to continue classes, like learner retention in the classroom, right? So do you think that having this additional option so that on days when people are running late from work or whatever, they can just log into the class instead of having to rush to school and maybe being late, do you think that will actually help students to be more motivated to continue a class rather than just happening to this, like, I can't do it, it's too much?
From what Holland's student said, I would say yes.
I agree. I just think it's going to be challenging for the teacher, but I think it'd be wonderful for the students.
Yeah, the
There's also an
flexibility.
opportunity to, I mean, if you can get the information, the skills in either way, it's an opportunity to get it both ways for reinforcement. I mean, if the technology piece is recorded and students can do it asynchronously, then maybe they went to class and they didn't get it all and they could then watch the Zoom. That, of course, is a burden in many ways, but Jen, did we answer that last question?
Yeah, I think we did. Gretchen's question about
No, the one that came in on the chat.
well, yeah, because Kat was wondering about, oh, well, I guess to build classroom community. If you guys, and we're, just to be respectful of everybody's time, we're nearly at the end of our time here, but did you guys have any other quick thoughts about if you think that high flex will impact community, or how you might make it better for those students?
it seems
I
like
think that's what I brought up about that it needs to be an equal experience for face-to-face and that's how you build community. I just think it's kind of hard to do.
Agreed. It's interesting. I wonder if we all feel now that even though you're right, Sylvia, it is hard to do, like suddenly we've had to learn so much in such a short period of time, sort of working towards that one goal will feel a lot more manageable than it might have in the past. I don't know.
maybe it's an idea for the next webinar, how to make it work.
All right. Well, I know we have to sort of wrap ourselves up here. We're putting the link to the tiny URL in the chat too, right? I think there, Kyoko put it in there, I think, right? And again, for those of you who joined us today, you are all really wonderful. And of course, our authors, thank you guys for doing this with us. This has been so much fun for me. So I'm really grateful. And I know Kyoko and Drew, who worked really hard to put all this together, are also really grateful. Does anybody have anything else they want to say before we finish out here?
Let us know your ideas, your high flex ideas. Let us know what you do that's successful.
Absolutely.
Thank you to all the teachers out
you.
there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're amazing teachers.
We appreciate you.
Thank you, Cambridge, also for doing this.
And if you're using Ventures and you see errors, continue to let us know. I'm amazed at how many teachers are they're not many errors. I didn't mean to say that, but I'm amazed at the fact that teachers are taking the time to let us know when they see something, and that Cambridge is so on top of it. And the next printing, it's always been corrected. So thank you for that too.
Yes, it's great. It's always great to get feedback. And I know we're always looking for ways to engage with all of you. And so when people have tips and tricks they want to maybe talk about or do a blog post about, I mean, certainly reach out to us, because we're always happy to hear from our community. It's a great community and a very knowledgeable community. So all right, well, if that is, if nobody has anything else, then I'm going to wave and say
Bye.
thank you again, everybody. It's been so great.
Hi, Simon. Or is he?
Hi. Thank
He
you,
is, he is
Jen.
now asleep.
Yay. That was amazing.
Okay.